For most of our existence, humans have eaten meat that's been cooked over an open fire. But did you know that one simple change made all the difference? Humans are omnivores. And for hundreds of thousands of years, we've been eating both plants and animals. But the quality of those foods has improved dramatically thanks to one thing: fire. We don't just eat different food than our ancestors did, we prepare our food differently, too. Let's take a look at what would happen if we went back to eating raw meat again. Welcome to FoodSaga. Like, subscribe, and comment for more. Let's start. If you think about the last time you ate a steak, you probably remember chewing and savoring the flavor. Well, not only does that sound pretty unappetizing, but it's also kind of gross. We all love to complain about having to chew with our mouths, especially when we have knives and forks and other fancy tools. But think about this. Every time you take a bite of food, your brain takes a little bit of energy from the glucose in your blood and uses it to tell your muscles how to move around your mouth. This happens whether or not that food is already chewed up or you have to do the chewing yourself. But if we had to get our nutrients from a nice cut of raw beef, things could get a lot more complicated. For example, there are several proteins involved in making sure you can properly break down and digest that meat. But the reason why digesting meat doesn't take any extra effort for us is because we've evolved along with our food. Over millions of years, the proteins in beef have become much easier for our bodies to digest. Not only that, but our guts are shorter than those of some other mammals who eat meat. That means our digestive process begins earlier in the mouth. So if we started eating raw meat again, we'd be starting at a serious disadvantage. Luckily, the way our ancestors prepared meat over a fire helped them overcome these challenges. Meat that's been roasted is easier to chew and digest, so our brains wouldn't need to use up as much energy getting nutrients from it. Roasting meat reduces the amount of connective tissue, which is made of tough protein fibers called collagen. The mechanical process of breaking down this collagen requires a lot of energy. But when meat is exposed to dry heat, enzymes begin breaking down the collagen and other proteins, releasing amino acids that can be absorbed directly into the bloodstream without any chewing at all. This might not seem like a big deal now, but think about the fact that every single bite of food you take, your brain uses up some of its precious energy stores to make sure you can chew. By removing the need to chew, roasting meat freed up huge amounts of energy that our ancestors could use to grow bigger brains. Speaking of brains, check out this cool way you can keep your brain sharp as you get older. Now, before we get back to the video, another way that cooking meat helped our ancestors was by unlocking more of its nutrients. The heat used to cook meat breaks down some of its components so they can be more easily absorbed during digestion. For example, imagine that you're trying to extract the nutritious bits from a chicken egg. You could try sucking the yolk out of the egg through a straw, but it'll be hard work because the yolk isn't very runny. On the other hand, if you fry the egg, the yolk will be much easier to slurp up. Roasting meat makes more of its nutrients, including protein and fat, more liquidy, meaning they're easier to absorb and deliver throughout the body. That makes it easier for our guts to pull the nutrients out of the meat and send them into our bloodstream to be delivered to the rest of our bodies. So when meat is roasted, our bodies can absorb more of its calories. In fact, researchers believe that our ancestors discovered the benefits of cooking meat as far back as to 0.5 million years ago. That was well before they began using tools or living in groups. If you're thinking that sounds pretty early, it's because it is. But the idea that humans first started eating cooked meat that early has been around since 1968. Some anthropologists say there is no evidence to support this claim. But we do know that hominins, which include modern humans and extinct human ancestors, were using fire for warmth and protection as early as 1.5 million years ago. It is reasonable to assume that they also figured out that fire could be used to cook their food. This may have seemed like a pretty small step at the time, but it led to some really big changes over the next few million years. As hominins became more intelligent, they probably began experimenting with different cooking techniques and different types of foods. Eventually, they learned to roast meat over an open fire. They could either slowly roast the meat or quickly sear one side while leaving the other side rare. Today, we still do this and even have special equipment like barbecue pits and rotating spits to make the process faster and easier. But back then, it wasn't easy to make the perfect medium rare steak. Our ancestors probably didn't even know what temperature they needed to cook the meat to make it the right consistency. Instead, they developed skills to judge doneness by sight, smell, and touch. Not only that, but they had to learn to recognize which animals were safe to eat and which ones were poisonous. They also needed to figure out how long to cook the animal remains to kill any potentially harmful bacteria or parasites. Learning all this took time, but the payoff was huge. Meat is usually cooked between 145 degrees Fahrenheit and 165 degrees Fahrenheit, or 63 degrees Celsius and 74 degrees Celsius, depending on the cut. This high temperature kills off dangerous bacteria like E. coli and parasites like tapeworms. It also helps eliminate any potential toxins produced by plants the animal ate before it died. That means that eating roasted meat can help prevent diseases, allowing more people to survive to old age. Our ability to cook meat helped our brains evolve in another way, too. When meat is roasted, it becomes softer and easier to chew. This means that our ancestors didn't have to spend as much time chewing and grinding their teeth against each other to break down the food in their mouths. And as we mentioned earlier, this saved energy that could be used for other activities. Chewing is surprisingly taxing. When researchers looked at how much energy a group of college students expended while chewing gum, they found that chewing sugarless gum for 3 minutes burned about 11 calories. Of course, real chewing is a little bit different from chewing gum, but this gives you an idea of just how much energy goes into chewing. Researchers estimate that our ancestors spent about 10% of their waking hours chewing. And if they had to eat raw meat, they'd likely be chewing even more. Imagine you're one of our ancestors and you've just finished chewing a piece of meat. You notice that your mouth is sore and tired from the effort. Raw meat isn't very filling, so you need to find something else to eat. But you've already spent so much energy chewing. You don't have much left to spend searching for new food. If our ancestors had to eat raw meat, they might not have had the energy to spend looking for more food. Not only that, but all that time spent chewing means there would be less time for socializing, making tools, and learning. These activities require a lot of brain power. So if our ancestors spent all their time chewing raw meat, they wouldn't have had enough energy to advance as a species. So eating roasted meat instead of raw meat helped our brains evolve in several ways. It allowed more energy to be used for growing larger brains. It made it easier to obtain the nutrients our brains need to function. It reduced the amount of time spent chewing, which allowed our ancestors to spend time on other important activities. And it helped prevent illness, which kept our ancestors healthy as they used their brains to develop new skills. Without these advantages, our brains might not have grown as large or advanced as they did, and we might not be where we are today. So the next time you sit down to a delicious meal of barbecued ribs or a juicy burger, take a moment to appreciate that one simple change, cooking meat over an open fire, made all the difference in how our brains evolved. Thanks for watching FoodSaga. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.